Good morning and happy Sabbath. Thank you so much for that special music. That was beautiful. Well, we wanted to tell you today, yes, that'd be perfect, Buck. We wanted to tell you about our trip that we went on in March. And we went on a Maranatha trip. And, you know, we had gone on our a mission trip last fall with Steve and Lynette to Thailand, and we really enjoyed it, and we were really blessed by it. And before we even went on it, Robin and Patty called us, and they said, guess what? Maranatha International is going to Kenya, and that's our favorite place to go, and you guys need to go with us. We said, oh, really? We just already have a mission trip planned. But they were very convincing, and so we decided to go. And I'm really glad that we did. Are you glad we did?
Absolutely.
All right, so here's a few pictures. We have a lot of pictures, so we're going to move fairly quickly. If you guys want to dim the lights, that would probably be good. My brother and his family took us to the airport. We didn't want to leave our car at the airport for nearly a month, so they thankfully took our car. Here we are on the plane, and then our first stop was Paris. So we flew from Spokane to Seattle, and then Seattle to Paris. And so we arrived in Paris, and we had a fairly short layover, and there was just 5 minutes before landing, a young man on the airplane had a seizure, and so then that delayed us getting off the plane a little bit, and so then we are in Paris, and we have this short layover, and then our plane had a problem, and it took 3 hours to get a new airplane. And during that time, we got to visit with some people from Chattanooga, Tennessee. We met some of the hosts of our Maranatha trip, and the Chattanooga area, or whatever the school is, the academy is by Southern, they were taking a mission trip as well. So we got to visit with them. And one of the young ladies from that had dropped her passport, or her fanny pack fell off in Paris. Sorry, Sabine. The Paris airport's a little janky sometimes. They get you off, and then they put you on buses and drive you around the city, it feels like, before you get to the airport terminal. And one of the girls, as she was walking out, her fanny pack fell down onto the tarmac, and she could see it, but she wasn't allowed to go get it. And so that took probably an hour and a half for her to get her passport back. So by our plane being delayed, she didn't end up missing her flight. So really, in the end, it was a bit of a blessing. You want to tell?
This was Nairobi, driving to our first hotel. And it's really, if you've never driven in a third world country, I've heard a lot of them are similar, but Nairobi was particularly this way, and India can be this way, where when it's not rush hour, it's a single lane of traffic, or two lanes, each direction. And then on the way back, we were going rush hour, one lane turns into 3, sometimes 4, depending on, basically you have to be a very pushy driver. If you get your nose in, you go first. And honestly, their cars, some of them were in pretty good shape, but a lot of them were quite dented here and there, and you're like, you can kind of see how that happens, because they're just crazy drivers. We were very thankful. We didn't rent a car. We got Ubers everywhere, which were very inexpensive, and our drivers were good drivers.
When they pull up and stop in traffic, they stop inches from the car in front of them.
Yeah, there's no personal space in Kenya. Physically, person to person, but also vehicle to vehicle. There is no personal space. You've got to be watching out for yourself if you want any personal space.
And one of these, the most memorable ride to me, we were right behind one of these transport vans, and there's people walking all over. There's donkey carts, there's hand carts, people pulling hand carts, and one of these transport vans in front of us, we're driving along 20 miles an hour or so, and the side mirror of that van hit a woman on the side of the road and knocked her to the ground. And it was just very scary. So we checked in at a hotel. Our family went 2 days early because we wanted extra time to get over jet lag. And so this hotel was like a fortress. There were no outside windows except that went into the courtyard in the middle.
It's probably for security.
So we met up with our group on Wednesday. Robin and Patty arrived Tuesday evening, and we got to have dinner with them. And then our group, everybody arrived on Wednesday. So we loaded up on these 4 vans that Maranatha owns. All of our luggage, you can see, is tied up on the roof. There was 61 people in our group. And so the first stop was the Adventist University there in Africa and Maxwell Academy. And on that campus, they have a big wall. Most institutions have a wall with razor wire on the top and a guard at the gate. And so once they let you in, you went from this smoky, there's no exhaust regulations there, smoky,
Plus
chaotic.
they burn trash everywhere.
Yeah, they burn trash. Chaotic street scene to it was just peace and relaxation on the Adventist University campus.
And just beautiful flowers, and the buildings were nice, more first world, I would say, inside the walls.
So where we are here, this is Maranatha's manufacturing plant. So Maranatha builds one-day churches, they build schools, all sorts of things. And what they do is they have a standard design. And you can see these are beams for the trusses, and they go together like old-fashioned erector sets. They have plates cut. They just use a drill gun and drill them all together. And the local crews can build 2 churches a day. And the churches are just, as you see these buildings in the background, they don't have walls. Local congregations may later build walls, but Maranatha just provides the posts and the roof. And the gentlemen that work here, like this paint man, he's worked for Maranatha for 6 years, and he is so proud of what he does. I don't remember what my next slide is. Here, this is the finished product of what we did, and the reason I wanted to show you this now is you see those windows, they don't have glass in them. They will have glass at a future date, and the doors, those are all made out of metal, and the Maranatha manufacturing plant builds all of those things. So the first place we went was we toured the Maranatha factory. They have a standard width. It's 25 feet wide, and then they just stretch it in length. They may build some churches larger, because the church that we showed you in the video, that was larger than these, but most everything is a standard construction, and they just adjust the length for the type of building that it is. So then we traveled by bus 6 hours from Nairobi to a place called Bomet. And this is probably 2 hours into that journey. And this is the Rift Valley, which is a place in Africa where, geologists say the continent is separating. And so this valley goes from Mozambique on the south all the way up to Syria. And I believe it's about 100 kilometers wide, and it's very flat, and it just stretches most of the length of that side of Africa. So it's a very famous place. So we have, of course, had to get a picture there. And you're driving through this mountain, and then you come out, and this view is in the background, and it was just beautiful. We were there at the end of the rainy season. Of course, Robin and Patty were with us. So then we got to a hotel. Maranatha puts you up in a hotel, provides transportation, provides food. Maranatha has a chef that goes into the hotel kitchen and helps them cook and helps them provide appropriate food and make sure that the food's appropriate for Western stomachs.
Yeah, make sure it's safe for us.
So this gentleman in the middle was our host. Unfortunately, he got sick partway through and had to actually come back to the U.S. But he got us started off. He and his brother stayed for the rest of the trip. They were both born in Africa. Their grandfather was a missionary from Wales and went to Africa in 1910, 1915. And then the 2 young ladies that he's standing between are the 2 young ladies that came from Cuba for this trip. Somebody sponsored them to come, and they're theology students in Cuba. And we should really be praying for Cuba right now, because since the U.S. took Maduro out of Venezuela, no more oil is going to Cuba. And so they have severe fuel shortages. From what I hear, it sounds like the government is really on the verge of collapse.
The seminary had to close because they had no food and they had no fuel, so they're not sure what they're going back to.
Some of the ladies on the trip really befriended them and took them shopping in Nairobi and bought them more clothes. And Chloe thinks that they didn't have computers at home, bought them some laptop computers so that they can, function as students. So there was 5 main things that we were going to do on this trip. We were going to build a school building at the Kimagoro School. We are going to conduct a dental clinic. There was a dentist from Bonners Ferry and a dentist from Nebraska on the trip. We are going to conduct a vision clinic. Maranatha purchased a vision kit, and it has all the stuff in it to test people's vision, and then there was lots and lots of different glasses, and Chloe will tell us more about that at some point here. And then we were going to conduct a series of one-day vacation Bible school programs. We were going to build 2 one-day churches, and as a bonus, we were going to get to watch Maranatha drill a well at one of those one-day churches. The one-day church that got the well drilled was just a couple of miles away from our hotel, but they told us that the people in that neighborhood did not have any safe drinking water that they could physically walk to. And so drilling this well was going to be a great blessing for that community. Water gets hauled on donkeys. There's a lot of donkeys in Kenya, and they would have their little pack trains, and they'd be walking back and forth, or they would tie a rope around their foot, and they'd tie them to something, and they'd be grazing on the side of the road. But there was lots of little donkeys everywhere. Here they're carrying cabbages. This was what typical roadside looked like whenever we went through a village or a small town. Here's a street scene. This is in Bomet. Kenya is a very Christian country, so I can't read what the sign says, but one of the billboards advertising a hospital said something along the lines of, Jesus heals, we just do, the footwork kind of thing. So it was fun to get to see that kind of a thing. Here is the first one-day church site. You can see, I'm going to wave my mouse, right here there's a post, another post, another post, and this site was really muddy. And so this is the first place that we went, and we got to see this. Now off over here past Nathan is the home of the lady who donated the ground for this church. And so the first Friday, Robin went with a team of about 9 other people, and they constructed this one-day church. And so Friday afternoon, on our way back, we stopped at this church, and these local church ladies here, they sang. They were so thankful to have this church, and it is muddy. Our shoes are it's like soggy muddy. So we ended up pouring a concrete floor for that church. One evening, we raised enough money in our group to afford the concrete for that, and then we bought them blue plastic lawn chairs so that they can have chairs in their church as well. Here we went down to visit the lady that donated the property, so here's our whole group down there to say hello to her. Here's her house. She lives in the house on the right. She's 96 years old. One of her daughters lives in this hut. I didn't look in this other thing. I think it was kind of a barn, but I'm not exactly sure. They had cows, and they milked the cows and various things. Here's that lady. She's had a stroke. She's paralyzed on the right side, but she's been praying for 50 years that God would provide a church. So it was really emotional for us to see. This was on Sabbath. She came out the afternoon that the church was constructed, and her family's helping her walk. She's paralyzed on one side, and they're walking her to a chair, and she's exclaiming all these things. And the pastor said she's saying, praise Jesus, over and over, that she could look up and see a church. Her daughter told me later that when she was admitted to the hospital at some point, and she said, Lord, I cannot die until I see a church built on this property. And so she said, now the church is built, I can go to rest. You might notice she has the elongated earlobes. A lot of people her age had that. We didn't see, even when we went to a Maasai village, the older people had that, but a lot of the younger people did not have that. So there's a lot of change happening there. Here's preparing to lay the concrete floor. The ladies in this picture walked up the hill. I'll show you a picture. They filled those, that was cooking oil in those jugs before, but now they're water jugs. They filled them, they wrapped a towel around it, and then held the towel over their shoulders and carried the water down, and the men dumped it into these barrels, and they mixed concrete for, it must have been 20 by 35, 40 concrete floor. We thought we were going to do most of the work, and we got there, and they were 2/3 of the way done. So the teenagers jumped right in and hauled sand. They would fill these buckets with sand and gravel and haul it up to the mixer, because the trucks weren't able to get close to the church to dump things. So here we are mixing concrete. Here's the ladies getting the water from just a depression in the ground for the concrete mixing. Here's some of the group that hauled the concrete. And here everybody is after the concrete floor was finished. Right outside of that, there was a public school. And the kids at the public school were super excited to see us, and they actually broke down part of the fence. I didn't have time to put videos into this, but the kids were just crazy. They wanted to shake all the kids' hands and fist bump them. We gave the school on the right 2 soccer balls, and then we gave the high school on the left side of the road 2 soccer balls as well. So from that one-day church, we went to the Kimagoro school. And in the distance, it's a little hard to see, right here is the school buildings. This over here is a tea factory. They grow tea leaves there, and so this tea factory processes all of that. Here we received quite the greeting. Greetings there are very official. These kids were marching to music that was being played from the church, and so they marched in 2 columns, the girls on one side, the boys on the other side, and they marched up to greet us, and then marched us into their church, and then we were seated. And so here's all the kids, super excited to have us in there. And like Marika said, they will sit practically on top of each other. They don't mind sitting close. So about 4 years ago, Maranatha started working with this school. The principal's been there for 10 years. They investigate their projects before they begin investing in them. And when they got there, all of the buildings at the school looked like this, or they said even this one looked very nice. This is one of the classrooms. Probably the classroom that we built will be replacing this one. It was dark in there. As you can see, there's just a tiny window, and this is a very small room. And when the sun comes out, oh, that tin roof gets hot. Here was the building that we were working on. The local Maranatha construction team had the roof beams on. They had a concrete floor poured, and they had the first row of bricks down. And while we were there, we bricked up pretty much the rest of the building, assisted them in putting on a metal roof, and they put metal bars into the concrete walls that when they put their door frames and window frames, they just weld them to the little concrete, or to the steel studs sticking out of the wall. Here was the kids were doing their laundry outside. On one of the previous visits, Chloe, you were going to come talk about this. On one of the previous visits, they built the girls' dormitory and the boys' dormitory.
So before they had very small, like kid-sized beds, but when they got these large beds, they have sheets and pillows, and that was all new to them. So the women in the group had to come and show them how to make a bed, how to put the sheets on, how to use a blanket.
How to put a pillow in a pillowcase.
Yeah, so stuff like that. And under each bed, they have lockers, and these bunk beds are made at that steel factory. And when the girls got to see these new beds, they had been sleeping about 3 to a bed, and they were very little beds before. So they weren't used to sleeping by themselves. So even after they got these new beds and they each basically had their own bed, they were still continuing to sleep together because they were like kind of lonely.
They're like, the first night maybe we'll just sleep 2 of us in a bed till we get used to it. And they said the clothes the kids were wearing were pretty ratty then, too. They were really, most of the people in our group that had been there before were impressed. The kids had 2 different school uniforms and then like a tracksuit uniform. And the kids looked really good. So they have a nice cafeteria and a nice kitchen. Still very simple, but because we were there and we were going to be eating lunch, they gave us their kitchen and their cafeteria, and their cooks went down to this shack. And this is like a concrete fire pit that's designed to hold their kettle. And their kettles are about this big around because they're feeding 400 children. And they cook in there. There's a little tiny chimney, and so this building is just filled with smoke most of the time. I went down and spoke with the cooks, and they were really nice gentlemen. It took 2 of them to carry that pot of rice, and just beyond it you can see there's beans, and here's the kids all lined up waiting for their lunch. They eat very simply. These boys gave me a tour, and one of the chickens, this is a chicken house behind them, one of the chickens escaped, so they caught the chicken. They showed me their gardens. They grow a lot of greens there. They grow a lot of corn, maize. They grow a lot of cabbage. This little boy really impressed me. He had good English, really bright little boy. I think he was 14, and it just cracked me up. I asked him, well, what do you want to do someday? He says, I want to be a doctor. He says, I want to go to Oxford in Australia. Here we are laying brick. Nathan, did you want to come talk about construction?
So during construction, this looks like it was when we had already gotten started. Do you have a picture of when they were showing us? All right, we can go back. So at the first day of construction, they talked to us about laying the bricks and showed us how to put the mortar on and lay the bricks down. And we got maybe by the first day 2 layers, but by this other days it went a little bit quicker. This was probably,
this is
the end, I guess, when we were just doing cleanup. And we left spaces for windows, and we poured the concrete and had rebar inside, and that was fun, yeah.
So, thank you, Nathan. So this was about 20 kilometers, so about 16 miles from the hotel to the school, but it's from like 6,500 feet of elevation to 7,000 feet of elevation. The school was right at 7,000 feet. And probably 3/4 of the way was dirt road. Now, since Maranatha has been investing in this school, the roads have actually improved. They were fixing the road up. They told us initially it was going to take 1 hour and 20 minutes to drive that 16 miles, and it turned out to be, because of the road improvements, only about 1 hour or maybe 50 minutes. And part of the road is actually even paved now. And so Maranatha going into an area and working there, it just raises the standards of the whole community around it. It was really fun to see that. So right here on the left, you see one of our buses, and on the right is a tea truck. So the ladies carry these bags on their back, and they pick tea leaves and put them in the bags, and then the truck comes by and picks them up, and each bag is weighed, and the lady who has picked it gets paid according to how much she has picked. And so this truck is like full of these like knapsack-looking things shaking as it goes up to the tea factory to unload all of these tea leaves. This truck was going up to the tea factory to pick up a load of finished product, and it had rained quite a bit, and I believe that the driver of the truck was fairly inexperienced, and so when we got there, the truck was jackknifed on this corner. And I wish I could show you the just pure pandemonium that went on as we all unloaded, stood on the side. The teenagers were cheering and just making a ruckus, and this gentleman here is a Maranatha employee, and the Maranatha employees are shouting directions at the semi-truck driver, and finally they got it to a spot where the buses could come around it, we could pull out of the way, and then the truck backed up, and we were able to continue on our way. And this other truck was fully loaded, and so I think that they were going to turn around and try to help pull this semi just past this corner, because once he got past there, I think he'd be okay for the rest of the way up to the factory. Every morning and evening we had worship. The kids let out in songs. There was 19 kids, 18 years old and under, and then probably about 5 that were between 19 and 25. So we had quite a few young people there, and this young man did a fantastic job leading the kids in song service and encouraging them to share something important. Every evening we debriefed what we had done for the day, what was exciting, what struck us. It was a very nice time. And we had wonderful worships. This is in the garden of the hotel. Here's a chameleon walking in the bushes. He was really fun to see. This is Robin Marsh's cousin, his first cousin. Neither one of them knew that the other was going to be on this trip. And he is a retired pastor and chaplain. And so he was giving the worship one evening, and we really enjoyed getting to know him and his wife. The kids playing a game of Uno after worship one evening. They had crazy rules, and they just had a blast doing that. So this is a vacation. Oh, sorry. We gave out about 2,000 Bibles on this trip. The gentleman right here was one of the co-hosts, and his business team had raised most of the money, I believe, for the Bibles. Bibles are about $10 each, and everybody we met pretty much wanted to have a Bible. And so these are all public school children that were there after church one day. The first Sabbath, we worshiped at that one-day church, and we gave all of the church members that didn't have a Bible, we gave all of them a Bible. And all the kids that were there, we gave a Bible. And then all of these school children lined up at the back of this truck because they knew there were Bibles in there, and they wanted Bibles as well. Here's a little girl. It had begun to rain, so she was carrying her Bible under her coat to keep it dry. So I asked her if I could take a picture of that, and I thought that was really sweet. At the Kimagoro school, they gave all the kids Bibles last year, and so the principal pulled out all the new students that didn't get a Bible last year, and so all of these kids got Bibles as well, and so they were very happy to have that. And staff members that didn't have a Bible, I remember one lady, she had an English Bible, but she asked if she could have a Bible that was in the local dialect so that she could compare the two as she was reading. And she's one of the ladies, she has children of her own, but she actually lives in the dorm. She's a dorm mom because there's 400 students, so there's like 98 boys that board there and like 138 girls that board there, and then the rest are day students. And the teachers that work there don't necessarily even have homes of their own. They rent space in houses in the community, and when you say rent space, they rent space to sleep. The rest of the time they're at school.
So is this Vacation Bible
Yes.
School? Okay, Harrison, do you want to talk about Vacation Bible School? So how many kids did we start off with? Do you remember?
700.
Okay, so first of all, it started off we knew we had potential for a lot of kids. It started off with maybe just like less than 100, and then all of a sudden there was 200, and then how did it go? Like they just kept coming. Kids just kept coming and coming and coming. Can you imagine doing a VBS with 725 kids? I was like, what are they going to do? I was just an assistant. I wasn't in charge of the program or anything, so I was just trying to imagine what we would do. What did we do, Harrison?
So we got these little scratch sheets and gave out those, and they got to do that. So half of the group, we split the whole 700 kids into half. And so half got to play a game called River and Bank, and then the other half got to do these little scratch things. And then they would switch so that they all got to do some of each.
Yep, and then we also sang songs, and they had a story. And yeah, it was amazing. And at the end of it, I don't know if we have pictures, but we gave out toothbrushes. And we had a certain number of toothbrushes.
She's demonstrating how to brush your teeth.
Yep.
There.
And I forget exactly the numbers, but we had, say, 350 toothbrushes. And we lined up the kids. We started with youngest to oldest, because the older of the kids, they are able to go figure out ways to get their own toothbrushes. They can they can find resources to figure out how to get them. But basically, anyone who was old enough and had teeth, up until somewhere in the mid-teens, we wanted them to all be able to have toothbrushes. So we didn't have enough for all of the kids. But anyways, what happened is we had them line up, youngest to oldest, in that order. And then as they took a toothbrush, we would mark their hands so they didn't come back around to try and get another one. And we counted, after the kids had gone through, somebody was also counting the kids separately, so we could know how many kids have been through. And say we had like 350 toothbrushes. By the time all the kids had gone through and got toothbrushes, we had counted like 500 kids. So
in that 500, there were little kids that were being carried by other kids, and so they didn't get a toothbrush. So the number wasn't exact, but we're pretty sure that God
it was a miracle.
multiplied
It was
the number of
definitely,
toothbrushes.
yeah, it was a miracle. I mean, we knew that it was difficult. I mean, you can't just load up a suitcase and bring stuff into Kenya because of their customs and stuff. Like, they will charge you, and sometimes they will charge you a lot for something that's really not worth that much. So they had said, if you want to bring stuff like in multiples, if it doesn't look like you're bringing it for your own personal use, they will charge you for it. So we packed a ton of clothes, and we left clothes there as our sort of donation, but we didn't pack stuff. We tried to make it not obvious that, we're giving stuff away. And so I'm not sure who brought the toothbrushes, but anyways, there were things like that happened that were like, like God's hand was working. Not only that, as the line went down, we were looking and we have so we have 7 toothbrushes left. And what we don't want to happen is that one kid in a group somehow doesn't get one, because they're going to feel really bad, right, if everyone else has one and they don't. And the kids also, it's just much better if all of the group gets one. So we looked and we had 7 left. And in line, there was 7 kids left of that category. So everything just worked out amazingly, perfectly every single time.
It was a real blessing. And it was fun to come back each evening and hear stories of this is what happened to us today. So here's the little girl getting her Good News Bible. So this is the dental team. This is Jonathan in the middle. He's from Nebraska. Donna is from Texas. And the 4 of us all worked in dental for a few days. I felt bad for Jonathan because he has limited tools and he's bent over for hours working on these people's teeth.
And these Kenyans, they eat healthy diet. Rice, beans, vegetables. They have strong bones. Now, they don't have dental care, so their teeth are worn down, and they do get rotten teeth, but their bones are strong, so they're actually pretty hard to pull out.
This young man in the gown got to pull a tooth from this little boy, and the dentist is here, Jessica Kaufman from Bonner's Ferry.
That's one of the things I really loved about this trip, is how the young people could get in there and do stuff. Like, in America, a teenager pulling out someone's tooth, that's not going to happen, right? But if you're interested and you want to explore a profession or whatever as a teenager, it's a wonderful opportunity. Chloe will probably talk about vision at some point. It's a wonderful opportunity for them to get in there. Nathan loved bricklaying and helping with the building, and it was just a really great opportunity. Here I am sterilizing the dental equipment.
Here's the dentist working. I was the drug man. I passed out antibiotics and ibuprofen and Tylenol. Chloe, come tell us about vision.
So we had a pretty large vision group, and we were testing for seeing for far glasses, and then also we had readers. So they would give them a little sheet of paper, and then they'd sit down and wait. And then they'd be able to get tested for far. And then if they needed those, some people would put them together with the right strengths. And then if they didn't, they could come over to me and whoever was helping me, and we'd see if they needed readers. So this is my station here, and then over here she's testing for seeing
Distance.
for distance. Yes,
Do you remember how many glasses you guys gave out?
a lot. I don't remember the exact number.
450, something like that?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the vision team saw a lot of patients. And we kind of split up. They did Vacation Bible School at 4 different places. One of them was a public school. That was a short one. They went to a Catholic school, and there was some issues there because they hadn't cleared it with the bishop yet, and he was a little unhappy with that. But everything got smoothed out in the end. This lady got a brand new Bible and a pair of reading glasses. Here's just some transportation pictures. This man is a motorcycle taxi driver. So I asked him one day, well, how much would you charge to go from the school down to the hotel? And it was like $4. And so one day after work, he gave me a ride down there. He took me by his house, introduced me to some of his children, and he was so proud to have me ride on his motorcycle. And as we're going, people are like, what are you doing over there? What's going on? We're kind of an oddity to have white people riding on the back of a motorcycle up on that mountain. And such a nice gentleman. Here we are, getting ready to go across the bridge at a river. A car had stalled. So at this bridge, there's a car stalled, a tractor hauling stuff. There's a local transport bus waiting to cross. These people, other people on motorcycles. There's guys hauling water out of the river to wash a car. And then I look down in the river, and there's a man taking a bath. Just all sorts of stuff. Here was the opening inauguration ceremony, if you will, for one of the classrooms. The wall wasn't finished, the partition wall. It was 3 classrooms in this building. So I climbed up on the scaffolding on the other side so I could take this over-the-wall shot to give you a wide angle of the classroom. But these classrooms are going to be really fantastic for these kids. Here was the outside of the building with balloons. They had a ribbon cutting ceremony. It was a lot of fun. The last day's work, the Maranatha crew were putting the roofing on, and they really didn't want any of us climbing up there to help. So Robin and I, with some other people, picked up all the loose concrete and mortar around the outside. And you didn't realize how bad it was until you finished cleaning up, and then you're like, wow, it was really messy around here. This was our last Sabbath. In the bus, the kids were playing a game. It was about a 2-hour drive to church, and we went to a Maasai church. The Maasai are the historically nomadic people that wear those blankets and have lots of goats and cows. And this church greeted us in an amazing fashion. They had mostly their older members or mature members all dressed up, and once again they marched out to us to music, and they presented us with these Maasai blankets. Now, the gentleman sitting next to me, he's spent a lot of time visiting Kenya, and he's like, they can't afford to buy us all these blankets. So he says, Maranatha bought all these blankets and gave it to this church so that they could give us a gift. And so they had tents set up outside. A sound system is not complete there unless the speakers are crackling. Okay? It has to be loud. This is their church that Maranatha built a number of years ago. One of the guys that helped build this church, he said this is his favorite congregation in all of Kenya, and he likes to joke that the last stop before we go to heaven is going to be at this church because he just loves it so much. And they made it abundantly clear to us that we need to come back and we need to build a school and a clinic. And so I asked one of the ladies that was talking about the school, and she's a teacher in one of the local schools. I said, well, if we build a school here, how many kids will come? She's like, right away we'll have 100 kids. Because they don't have what do you call the younger kids? Elementary school that the kids can get to without trying to cross a river. And so it's not a very safe thing. And this church would be an excellent opportunity for outreach in their community. They were just a vibrant group of people. It did crack me up. They said, I've always heard that in Africa they sing really well. That's only parts of Africa. These people said, the choir is going to get up and sing. And the choir was them like doing this kind of dance to music that was being played over the PA system. And it was very special. I'm not knocking it, but it just was not what I expected. And then, of course, they wanted us to do it too. So then they drug all of us. So we're all walking like this in a circle. Marika is not in this picture because she was ill that day, so she stayed home. So on our way home, you couldn't have a mission trip without getting stuck somewhere, right? So the river was flooded. When we got in the morning, there was just a couple inches of water running over this bridge. And when we got back at 3:30 in the afternoon, there was about 3 feet of water running over this bridge. So we were all worried about what to do. The buses stopped, and a local policeman was passing by because there's several hundred people here milling about. And a local policeman said, the water will be down enough by 6:30 tonight, you'll be able to drive across, no problem at all. So by 5:30 that afternoon, the water was down enough. The lead Maranatha worker, Anu, who's Indian, she hired about 6 guys, and they pushed our bus across the bridge because the air intake on the bus was so close to the ground, they didn't feel like they could safely drive across without sucking water into the engine. So they're like, okay, we're going to cross, but they didn't tell us that part. So they're going to cross, so we start driving down towards the water, and then they turn the engine off. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then all these guys start running and yelling and pushing, and they pushed us right across the river, no problem. Everybody got out to see what was going on and watch. And once again, we were quite the attraction. So that was the end of our mission experience, and then everybody went on safari. So we're just going to show you a few pictures here real quick of safari. We met all these safari jeeps, and then we finished our trip. We were divided up. The 56 people were divided up into about 10 different jeeps. Our family had one jeep. We had a really nice driver by the name of Tony. So then we went to a Maasai village. I'm sorry, couldn't get it ready for you, but we videotaped them. The Maasai are the ones that jump, and they jump really high, like probably this high, without using their thighs. It's all like in their calves. So they showed us around their little mud huts, and it's all in a circle like this. And guys, can you get out the stuff out of the bag and show people that? So they had these. He told us it was a back massager. And then I asked somebody else, and he said it was a club. But I bought one. There's a club, and then they bought a Maasai knife, and you negotiate there. They tell you, this will be $30, and you'll probably pay $10 to $18. And Robin got one too. Some of these little carved things were gifts that they gave us for coming to participate. They do lots of beadwork, really beautiful stuff, and of course Maasai blankets. And then we got to the wildlife park, and this was the first place we went. Was these lions had killed a Cape buffalo, and they'd eaten it. One was laying next to the kill, the other one was sleeping in the bushes. Then, of course, there were zebras and elephants and giraffes and little Thompson's gazelles. Harrison, you want to tell about this? It's on, just talk.
They're KFC.
They're Kenyan fried chicken. That's what our driver liked to refer to them as. They're guineas, yes. They're African guineas. At the Masai Mara Park, the sky was just beautiful all the time. This was the hotel we stayed at, and there were guards. The guards carried the knives and the clubs, and in the evening at night, they'd escort you to the room because it's right on the edge of the park. All we saw here was zebras, but they said in the dry season sometimes the elephants will come up here. Technically, you could get lions and leopards as well. And there were 2 rooms in a Quonset hut type shaped building. And so they would walk us to there in the evening if we wanted.
On all of the doors in the huts, I don't think we have a picture of the huts, but on all the doors they had a whistle, and the guards would tell you, if you see an elephant, blow the whistle.
The elephants there are they're more aggressive. Here was another lion. Here was the group of girl lions all sleeping under a tree. There was water there. And see all that stuff on its nose? Those are all flies. Then we stopped at a picnic spot, and these birds came around and were begging, and you would throw them something, and either they would catch it in the air, or they would let it land on the ground, and they'd pick it up, and if they didn't want to eat it, they could tell by just picking it up if they wanted to eat it or not. And then if they ate it, they would hold it in their bill, and they'd throw their head back, open their bill, and it'd fly down their throat. We went to the river. I don't have any better picture, really, but right here, you see where the mouse is? Those look like rocks. Those are hippopotamuses in the river over there. It was rainy there. It rained a lot. Okay.
By the hippos, on the other side, there's some ponds, and we got to see a couple alligators.
Crocodiles.
Crocodiles.
They were fairly small. But at this place, there were military, I don't know if they're army or park people, but they were carrying rifles. And they wanted to make sure that they walked with us and we didn't go exploring without them.
What Harrison is holding is a Cape Buffalo skull and antlers, well, part of the skull. And at that place, there was just skulls everywhere, like ginormous. And there was a couple hippopotamus skulls that were maybe this big.
And we saw something in the river. It was too far away. It was floating. It looked like a stick. So I looked at it with binoculars, and it was a dead zebra floating down the river. The guides were getting stuck. Our driver was he called himself philanthropic.
So this car was super stuck, so they had to get 2 cars out there to pull it out. Once they got it out, we went and lended a tow rope, and they snapped one. So eventually they got it out, and they had been stuck there for 2 hours. And it was really muddy to get up there, so we were going to go up the hill to get some speed to go through the mud, because it was really muddy and we didn't want to get stuck. Right as we were going up, I looked out the window, and there was a lion.
She was about 100 yards away from where we were stuck. And we'd all gotten out of the car and were milling about, watching them get unstuck. And then we take off up the hill, and she's sleeping in a bush. We had 5 different cheetah sightings. We didn't get to see them catch anything or run, but this one was definitely on the hunt. And there was elephants. There was a herd of elephants that was probably 55 to 60 elephants in the herd.
So at the elephant pack, I went and counted right in front of us, well, on the side, there was like 20. And then I counted down in the valley, that was part of the herd, and I counted, so overall I had counted 52. 8 more came over the hill.
This was the lodge that we stayed at, the dining room.
And I bet there was maybe 70 because more kept coming out of the bushes.
This place probably had the best food. They catered to a lot of different guests. So then, after we were finished in Kenya, everybody else went home. Our family went to Zambia to the Riverside Farm to see our friends, the Ellers, because we figured we're all the way to Africa. We might as well quickly go down there. So we did. Zambia was different than Kenya. There was a lot of differences. This is the river that Riverside Farm is on. Here's Riverside grows bananas to sell. So their OCI, their goal with some of their projects, at least here in Zambia and then in Tanzania, is to provide their own financing for their own outreach. And so they commercially grow bananas. They're the second biggest banana producer in the country. They have 200 acres of bananas. We had Friday evening vespers at the fire pit at the farm director's house. Craig and Alicia Harding. It was fun up there. Then we took off for Livingston, Zambia, and Victoria Falls. It was about a 6-hour drive. We rented a van from Riverside Farm so we could all be in the same vehicle. And then we got to the falls, and of course it was the end of the rainy season, so there was just a tremendous amount of water. It's hard to get a picture of how much water is going over the falls. But you walk across the little bridge that crosses part of the river, and you get wet. So here we are just completely soaked to the skin. But it was really fun. And of course it wasn't cold, so you didn't really mind. Here's more of the falls. Here's the river. This picture is taken from the bridge where you may have heard of people bungee jumping by Victoria Falls, and so they jump off this bridge. And this bridge connects Zambia and Zimbabwe. And so the border is painted on the bridge, and there's about 4 feet of no man's land. One of the local guides like to call it Zimzam. This is a resort just above the falls. You can see the mist coming up. And of course, on the way home, we had to get a flat tire. So we put the spare tire on, and then the boys handed Beaver the hubcap. So Beaver's like, okay, I guess I'll put it on. Starts to hammer the hubcap on, and the stem on the spare was rotten, and so it just breaks. So now we have 2 flat tires. So we walked half a mile into a little village. They didn't have any capability to fix a car tire, at least one that was tubeless. But they helped Beaver get a taxi, and the taxi was driven by an Adventist, and it was about 20 kilometers to another town to get the tire fixed. He purchased a new tire. They fixed the stem, but the taxi had a nearly blown engine, a nearly broken transmission, and 2 tires that looked like they were going to explode. So it was about a 3.5 hour event.
So while we were waiting for them to get back with the tires, we ended up waiting there for 3 hours.
So there's all these people walking, and they're like, what are you guys doing? So they're all coming to see what's going on. So I'm just showing these boys pictures of what life in Washington State looks like. Here was a family going home with firewood. See, the mommy's carrying a baby, firewood, and groceries. And then there was a fuel shortage there because of the war. And so we ended up buying some diesel on the side of the road. We did finally find a gas station that had diesel, but we passed many, many stations. We'd pull in, and they would hear the diesel engine, and they'd say, nope, no diesel. And this is transportation a lot. You can see the men sitting in the back of this truck on top of whatever luggage that was.
That one was pretty spacious. There wasn't too many people in the back of it. There was more up further, but that one was pretty spacious. Most of them had people just hanging on the bumper all over the place. It was crazy.
So as we close, where's my phone? This maybe hasn't been a very sermon-y sermon, but I wanted to talk to you just really quick about what can you do. Oh, and it seems my verse has gone away. but that's okay. What can you do? You know, there's lots of opportunities for service. We were privileged to be able to go do this. It was very expensive, and I was hoping to learn that the part of our cost of going there was funding the project. But I was told that maybe there was a couple $100 went towards the project, but most of what we paid was for transportation and for lodging and all those various things. So these projects, the one-day churches, the school projects, the Bibles, all of that is paid for by people making donations. And one of the construction host, his name was Peter, and you have to be sure to emphasize it because he's South African. He was saying, you know, a lot of times people will go home from a mission trip like this, and they'll decide that maybe they don't actually need a new car. Maybe they can put more money towards missions. Maybe they don't need to buy that fancy something or else. And maybe you're not ready to buy a new car. Maybe that's not in your budget. But I think that there's something for every budget in missions.
So one of the families that we went with, the Duffy family, they had 3 kids, and they were used to doing family vacations like what typical Americans do, right? We go on a cruise or we go to whatever theme park. I mean, most of us don't. But, you know, typical Americans, like you have, you know, once or twice a year, do something nice as a family, spend some money and do something nice. Well, after they went on their first mission trip, their kids turned around and said, we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to go on cruises. We want to do Maranatha mission trips. And this was their 3rd mission trip, and they loved it, and you could tell their kids were thriving. And it was a huge blessing for us to associate with them and see that, and also for our kids as well.
So, do you remember the Dime Tabernacle in 1895 or thereabouts at Battle Creek, Michigan? They needed to build a sanctuary, a big sanctuary. And so they decided that the best way to raise the funds was for every family to donate, I forget, once a week, once a month, to donate a dime. So they called it the Dime Tabernacle. And that was the church where they held Ellen White's funeral, because it was the biggest Adventist facility at the time. So Maranatha has a program called the $10 Church. And you can pledge to donate $10. You can do it $120 for a whole year, or $10 a month towards building a church.
I should just stay up here. I keep thinking of things to add. Here's the thing. We live in America. We are one of the richest countries in the world. We have everything at our fingertips. These people have nothing, absolutely nothing. I think God has allowed us to be here so we can use our means to help these people, right? There's a need there, and it does something for our hearts when we're willing to say, okay, I'm not going to get this because those people over there need something that they don't have. Or they need, you know, and it's just like God has, he's allowed that to be so that we can get out of ourselves and think about the needs of other people.
Look at the smile on these ladies' faces. This lady right here, it's hard to see, she's the daughter of the lady who prayed for 50 years to have a church built there. And I poked Robin because they were asking for somebody to have a prayer. And I don't think any of the adults were able to pray when we were first meeting that lady who had prayed for 50 years, because I don't think we emotionally could have prayed out loud without crying. And so one of the Duffy boys, this is his 3rd mission trip there in Kenya, went up and prayed. It was so emotional to be able to get to worship with somebody and see this lady's prayer being answered after 50 years. So I encourage all of you to do something for missions. Pledge something extra. These 3 men have spent, the cooks in the kitchen came out and they blared, of course, super loud music, and they were all dressed up and they had their Maasai blankets on and funny glasses and goofy hats, and they're dancing around the room, and then they're pulling us in, and we're all dancing in the circle around the cafeteria. And I saw the cakes, so I thought, oh, it's somebody's birthday. And then after what seemed like an eternity of this mayhem celebration, they were having a great time, and they loved seeing us join them. They lined up, and it was to celebrate. These 3 men, each of these men, have been working every year in Kenya for the last 10 years. And so, maybe you and I can't dedicate the next 10 years of every year going on a mission trip to Kenya, but maybe we can give $10 a month to build a church. Maybe we can give $10 a month to buy someone a Bible. If you gave $10 a month, it costs about $10 a month to buy a Bible. In a year, you would have provided 12 Bibles to people in Kenya. We were driving in the bus one day, and there was this older lady carrying this bundle of sticks, probably this big around, tied on her back, and she's walking, and she sees the bus, and she starts shouting, "Bible! Bible!" And so inside we're like, stop the bus, she wants a Bible. And we had a case of Bibles in there. And so there was a younger lady was walking the opposite direction and a man on a motorcycle, and so we gave all three of them Bibles. And we were able to give her a Kalenjin Bible, which is their local dialect, and then the younger woman wanted an English Bible, and I can't remember what the guy on the motorcycle wanted. But they have a tremendous need to get things there that we can help supply them. So I want to encourage you, whatever you can do, whether that's going on a mission trip to see it for yourself, or whether that's just donating $10 a month or helping to build a one-day church. Those are all things that we can do. And so I pray that we as a church, we've been a blessing in Thailand through our little kids offering, and I know, Chris, you've got us working here in our community because we all need to be preparing for Jesus' soon return. So let's quickly go to our closing hymn, and we'll get out of here. I apologize for going over time.
You probably already know that it's hymn number